Hello everyone and welcome back to this Football Manager 2017 experiment where we take a look at what would happen if you gave a non-league team the perfect facilities and reputation to build them up through the football pyramid and reach the top. Now last time we had made it 8 years into the future. Boston United, our guinea pigs for this experiment, had made it all the way to 10th position in the Premier League, getting knocked out of the FA Cup and the EFL Cup quite early on, but doing very well to finish in the top 10, having won the Championship, or gone up second, in the Championship the year before. So at the moment, the highest silverware or highest rated silverware they've won was actually the League One title when they finished first. They haven't won anything since then. And in this episode we are going to go forward 2 more years. We're then going to go forward 5 years. I'll keep updating their stats and everything as we go. I'm not going to update their stadium just yet because obviously they moved out of the big stadium before. If they haven't progressed in 2 years, I will upgrade the stadium to 150,000 and their attendance to 150,000 to give them a bit of extra financial firepower. But let's go forward 2 years and see if they've managed to progress on a 10th place finish. Well, as you can see, Joachim Löw has actually stopped being the manager of the club. If we have a look at their history of managers, we'll see they have actually gone through a few. Joachim Löw got sacked just over a year ago, and then they had Antonio Conte. He also got sacked, leaving them with Oleg Gusev at the moment in charge. Still got Koke at the team, despite it being 2026, but it looks like they've not actually done that well. If we go and have a look at their schedule for the senior squad, and drop back 1 year to look at last season. Pre-season went very well, a bit of time in China and the United States, but losing to Ipswich in the first game was quite poor, and they actually had a really poor run of form, losing to Spurs, Newcastle, United, Southampton and Burnley in the league, and then losing a 4th game in a row to United at home, 4-1, going out of the EFL Cup. They did manage to recover a little bit, but another really poor run of form before finally beating Liverpool 1-0 at home. They went through in the FA Cup and again against Sheffield Wednesday with even more poor Premier League form. And then this horrendous run of defeats in the league. I'm surprised they weren't relegated with this kind of form. That's 6 straight defeats followed by 2 draws and winning on the final day of the season. Let's just have a look at how they actually did in the Premier League that season, because that is some really poor results. If we drop back a year, we'll see they only avoided relegation because of that final victory on the last day of the season. They managed to stay in the Premier League. I really wasn't expecting that. I thought they'd do much better than that. Who was it they beat in the final game? They actually beat Arsenal 2-1 in the final game. Now that is a result. Arsenal finished 2nd in the league. That is a huge result to have done that. Now if we go forward to the next season, we can see that they again got off to a terrible start, really not living up to the standards of their first season in the league. They did beat Brighton, West Ham and Everton, but so many defeats in there, including in the EFL Cup to Sheffield United. And then some more draws, a couple of wins. They put together a run of 3 victories, including against FC United, 3-0 in the FA Cup 3rd round. And then it really fell apart. Look at that end to a season. They didn't win a game from the 4th of January. They won in the Premier League on the 1st of January and then didn't win a game for the rest of this season. That's why they went down. That is so poor. I can't believe they've managed to do that. If we have a look at the Premier League table, we'll see right at the bottom, 33 points again. If they just had 1 win in the whole of 2026, they would have stayed up, but that really terrible run of form has seen them get relegated back down to the Championship. So that's really poor. They've not been able to hack it in the Premier League whatsoever. Now what I'm going to do now is give them the maximum facilities and everything to help them kick on a bit. If we have a quick look at the transfers before we go ahead at time. This season, £32 million of players coming in. Quite a decent amount, to be fair. But with 13 million leaving the club as well, they maybe have let a little bit of damage set in there. They're not spending the kind of money they should be if they want to avoid relegation. Just £26 million or £21 million going out of the club the year before that. They did spend £53 million on Everton players the season before that when they finished 10th, but still not very good that they aren't managing to keep up with the Premier League teams, and going back down is really going to hurt their reputation. So I will pop this back up to 10. I'll also change their attendance and all the facilities back up to maximum, and then we will go forward 5 years and see if they finally manage to establish themselves properly in the Premier League as a force. Well, we are now 5 years in the future, and immediately after getting relegated, it looks like they did win the Championship and have since established themselves as a top half team. It looks like the expanded facilities have really had a big difference, but their club attendance has dropped down from 150,000. I did knock those two both up to 150k, so I'm not sure why it's dropped down so much. So you can see they have got the perfect stadium now. Their facilities still declining because the club not investing in them when they do downgrade the rating. But if we have a look at their senior squad schedule and drop back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons, this is how they got on in the Championship. Looks like a pretty decent run of form, especially towards the end of the season. Very few defeats in there, even making it to the FA Cup 5th round and taking Liverpool to a replay before going out on extra time. But they had a very good finish to the season as well, just a defeat to Brentford in there. If we have a look at the Championship table, then we can see they did manage to win the title by just 1 point ahead of Newcastle, a big opponent down there in the Championship. Newcastle almost always bounce immediately back. But quite a strong little Championship there, with Bournemouth also in the mix. But managing to win it, getting their highest piece of silverware to date. Not a bad result there. The following season, back in the Premier League, they did a pretty poor start to the season. They did go through in the EFL Cup into the 4th round, beat Crystal Palace there, and beat Watford in the quarter-final of the EFL Cup as well, to put themselves into the semis. A lot of draws, looking a bit like Manchester United at the moment, but did manage to get a few victories. And then at EFL Cup semi-final, they drew 2-2 at home with Arsenal, which would make that second away leg very tough, but they did win a few games around here, losing to Liverpool, drawing with Burnley, drawing with Chelsea as well, losing to Arsenal in the EFL Cup second leg. So they did go out of the EFL Cup, still in the FA Cup at this point, but then went out to Everton, playing them 3 times in 4 games. But did manage to put together a nice little run of form. 3 defeats here, not helping. In fact, that was 6 games without a point before beating Ipswich. They really do have terrible patches of form through the season, but ultimately they did finish 10th this season, not the worst position in the world. The year after that, again, another really poor run of form down here, getting knocked out of the EFL Cup in the 4th round. But they did put together a nice little run of wins, a couple of defeats, a few more draws, a few more poor results, and then a really nice patch of results, getting 6 wins across 8 games, 2 draws in there as well, and then losing 4 in a row, another terrible streak where they only got 1 goal across 4 games. But that meant they finished 9th that season, and then they had another season where they managed to improve again, more good results, going through in the EFL Cup quarter-final, beating Manchester City 2-1. Not a bad result there at all to go through. It looks like City were down to 10 men quite early on though, so that had an impact, but they had a really nice run of form, including in the league here, going through in the EFL Cup semi-final against Swansea, so they're into their first cup final. Also through in the FA Cup, their league form continuing into the FA Cup quarter-final, but lost 2-0 to West Ham in the final. Robert Slade getting 2 goals at Wembley. Also going out of the FA Cup to Swansea, so 2 really disappointing cup results there, but their league form did hold up reasonably well as they managed to finish as high as 7th or 9th, I don't remember which. But then in the final season, or is this the final season? There might even be another one. No, this is the final season. They did manage to start off reasonably well before a couple of defeats, going out of the EFL Cup. A few more wins than they were used to though, and then a run of 3 defeats, not helping, going out of the FA Cup as well. But that's quite a nice little run of form here before another collapse at the end of the season. They cannot help themselves with collapsing right at the end. And given they finished 7th that season, I think, they've done really poorly right at the end both times, finishing just a little bit outside of the Champions League places. If we have a look at the table from this season, 7th place, they have qualified for Europe. That will be huge for them next season. The top 8 in the league all qualifying for Europe, which you don't see very often. The year before that, they finished in 7th place again, 11 points off 6th. 9th the year before that, not the best performance, and the year before that down in 11th place in the league. So that's how they've done since coming back into the Premier League. If we have a quick look at the transfers for Boston, we will see that the money being spent, probably not that significant, £49.5 million, but they let £70 million worth of players go. Main player leaving here, Luis Angulo to Man City. Year before that, they did spend a bit of money, but again, £144 million leaving the club. Biggest sale here, £49.5 million for Nicky Fletcher. Year before that, they did spend a bit more money. Before that, they spent the same amount again, and before that, they made money once more. So they really are a mid-table team here. They build up these good players and then immediately let them go for £50-odd million. If we have a look at the shortlist, then we can see that a lot of players that seem to have been trained at Boston are now worth quite a bit of cash. If we have a look at Paul Curtis, who's top of the list, he's now 29 years old. He's the youngster who came through at Boston and moved to Stoke, and he then moved to Chelsea for £81 million, so they missed out on a lot of cash by letting him go. But he looks like he's become a real top quality player. That 19 finishing, 18 first touch really helping. 35 goals and 68 caps for England is not a bad return. Then you've got Kevin Stevens, who's only 23 years old and has been at the club the whole time, worth £34 million now. He's got decent finishing as well and has a few caps for England, so it's good they've got a player they have managed to hang on to. Nicky Fletcher now at Arsenal, 26 years old, another player to come through as a regen for Boston, doing very well. Did go to Crystal Palace for £10 million, but they signed him back for 27, and then he was then sold to Arsenal for nearly 50. So they did well bringing him back. He's got 44 caps for England now, so quite a few Boston graduates now in the England team. Josh Whittle, the next one on the list, he's 28, came through again but went to Stoke quite cheaply, all things considered. Paul Jenkinson, another England player from and at Boston, came through as a regen here, still at the club, getting a nice average rating. Richard Davies, now at West Brom, couple of caps for him for England. Another player to come through as a regen before moving for £20.5 million. Paul Price, now worth £24 million, a centre-back at Southampton, came through the Boston Academy. So it's interesting, a lot of England internationals all coming through at Boston. Morgan Watson, not yet played for England, but he's got a decent sort of return. But he came through at Waterford in Ireland before moving to Boston. And then also we've got Ben Woodburn, the player that was one of the big signings originally at the club, left for £55 million to Arsenal and has played pretty well for them ever since. Rob Hayward at Reading, a more recent regen, not played for England yet, moved there on loan at the moment from Boston. So a lot of players going through the Boston Academy and doing quite well for themselves. Those high facilities really coming into play quite a bit in this experiment, and a few of them still at Boston, which is nice to see, at least a couple of them still there, but there's not many of value left at the club. A lot of them have moved on elsewhere. But that is going to be it for this episode, I think. Drop a like on the video if you have enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe as well if you want to see any future parts of this, and let me know in the comments if you do want another part. I think I'd only do one more part to this experiment. I'd probably go forward about a decade just to see if they can finally break through and win some silverware at the highest level. But I hope you've enjoyed this experiment, and until next time, see ya.